What are familiar spirits and how can one defeat them? Before I take you deeper, allow me to say this up front. Familiar spirits are ruthless. Familiar spirits are heartless, are merciless. And not because other diabolic spirits are not ruthless. They are. But familiar spirits, they take the cup. And if there be a spirit that I hate with passion, with everything that is in me, is what we call familiar spirit. In plural, familiar spirits. So what are they? Let's break it down. A normal definition will say familiar spirits is a spirit of a dead person or dead people invoked by another person so that they could receive guidance or prophecy from them. But what does the Bible say about familiar spirits? According to the Hebrew Bible, a familiar spirit is called a household servant. A household servant. And of course, there's a reason why the Bible will call a familiar spirit a household servant. Let's go to Leviticus 19 and we read verse 31. The Bible reads, "Regard not them that have familiar spirits," meaning they are people who have familiar spirits. "Neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God." In Isaiah 8 verse 19, God is saying as well, do not go to people who have familiar spirits. So the word familiar spirits in the Bible appears more than 12 times. In the New Testament, we see the word familiar spirits appearing 2 times and 9 times in the Old Testament. So, since according to the Bible, Hebrew Bible, a familiar spirit is a household servant. What does that mean exactly? I'm going to quickly break it down, then I take you higher. Please pay attention. A household servant is someone that you open your door for. I'll say that again. It's somebody that you open your door for. And depending on how long the person has been working for you, chances are in no time they will know your house, every corner of your house, in and out. They will end up knowing things that you never shared with them. Just by observing you, they will know your favorite meal, favorite food. They will know your favorite drink. They will know what time you go to bed. They will know who visits you, at what time. And because of what they know, because of what they are familiar with, they can easily give you up to the enemy. They can easily betray you. They can easily sell you to your enemies. Remember, the more your enemy knows you, the better for them. The more they will have advantage over you. So a household servant becomes somebody who knows your life, who's familiar with your life. But the mystery here is that you opened a door for them. One will say, but what then happens, Apostle, if I've never opened a door for this household servant you're talking about, or if I don't remember opening a door, does that mean I don't have and I can't have familiar spirits as long as I did not open a door, they cannot attack me? Well, let's go to the Bible. And please here, pay attention. In the book of Genesis, here I'm taking you higher. Pay attention. Pay attention. In the book of Genesis chapter 15, God appears to Father Abraham for the second time. Remember the first time he appeared in Genesis 12. In Genesis 15, Abraham wants to know if what God had said to him will come to pass or will even come to pass. Will ever come to pass, so to say. Then God appears to him and says, look, it will come to pass, but I want you to do something for me. Build me an altar, sacrifice on the altar. He does that. Abraham does that. Then the Bible says he fell into a deep sleep. In a dream, God appears to him. Right there in Genesis 15. And God entered into a covenant with Father Abraham. In a dream, God sealed a covenant, entered into an agreement. And right in that dream, God says to him, I will be with your generation. Your descendants will be slaves, will be in captivity for 400 years in Egypt, in a foreign land. And God sealed that covenant. Abraham woke up and he was in a covenant with God. Later on, Abraham has a son called Isaac. God then says to Isaac, Isaac, I will be with you as I was with your father. Wait a minute, pause there. The reason why God is with Isaac is not because of Isaac, but God is with Isaac because of Abraham. Isaac is prospering. Isaac is ahead of the Philistines, his enemies, not because of him, but because of what the father did. The father opened the door, and in this case, for a divine spirit to be a backing in his life and in the lives of those who come after him. Isaac has sons, Esau and Jacob, and in this case, we'll focus on Jacob. Jacob, everything he touches prospers. He fights from a victory point. Every time he fights, he will come out victorious. He has a backing. Things seem to be moving for this gentleman, for this fellow. Why? Not because of him or his work ethic or his efforts or his talents or his gifts. No, it's not because he's brilliant. I want you guys to hear me. It goes beyond that. He has a backing. But where does this backing come from? Why is God with Jacob? Even after Jacob tricked his brother, why is God with this fellow? It's because of one man, and that man is called Abraham. He opened a door for a spirit. God is a spirit, a divine spirit. And because of that, his generation is thriving. His generation is affected, but in a positive way. His generation is looked after. Familiar spirits, believe it or not, are the opposite of what I just said. Just as God has sent to us, according to Hebrews 1 verse 14, ministering spirits, and of course angels. Angels are called ministering spirits in Hebrews 1 verse 14. And then says to minister for them who are what? Heirs of salvation. The Bible there is specific as to who these spirits who are ministering spirits they should minister to. The word minister is the word to serve. So the Bible is clear as to who these spirits are to serve. Familiar spirits are the opposite of what we just said. They are there not to serve you, but to serve their master. And since you are not their master, you are their victim. They will victimize you to please their master. They are called household servant because they are familiar with you. But how are they familiar with you? Because you've never opened the door. Well, familiar spirits are also called inherited giants, meaning they were never your giants, but you inherited them. One can inherit them. That's why some of you are fighting things that did not start with you. You are watching and you are wondering, how come I've been dealing with this in my life? How come in my family we are moving in this pattern? How come this is happening to my sister as it happened to my mother, now it's happening to me? It's because what you guys are dealing with, you are dealing with a familiar spirit. This spirit knows your limits, knows how far you can go, knows your grandmother, knows your grandfather. So it uses what it used against your grandmother to defeat you. So it knows who you are in and out better than you. And because of the information it has, it uses that to stop you from thriving. That's why some of you don't understand that these spirits are called familiar spirits because they are familiar with their victim. They are familiar. They will victimize their victim to an extent that the person themselves, every time they meet somebody, That other person's life will be messed up. Not because the person's life was not making sense, was making sense. But when they meet somebody with a familiar spirit, also their life starts going down. That's one thing about familiar spirit. You can meet somebody, sleep with somebody, and inherit that spirit that is familiar from that person, and you walk out with a familiar spirit. And that familiar spirit will deal with you, that once it finishes dealing with you, it does not leave you alone. It will go to those that are connected to you. Hence, I said it's ruthless. It does not harass you to an extent that when you feel like, you know what, I'm done, then the spirit goes, yeah, now I'm done. No. When you die, whoever is connected to you will inherit it. Hence, I hate this spirit with passion. And a lot of people have inherited familiar spirits from different people. And familiar spirits' duty, familiar spirits' number one job is to please its master. And in this case, it can be a witch, it can be a wizard, it can be somebody who spoke a bad word against your grandfather, it can be somebody who said something about your grandmother, it can be somebody who said something about your mother. And that spirit now obeyed the master. And in obeying the master, it had to make sure that the words spoken against your mother or your grandmother or grandfather take shape. And after taking shape, it does not go back to the master. So it will serve the master by messing up that person's life. And when that person dies, guess what? It does not go back to the master. It goes to the person who's connected to that person. That's what familiar spirits are capable of. That's what they do. That's what they specialize in. That even in relationships, a lot of people don't make progress. And not because they are not good people. And not because they are not loving people. They love. They want the best for others as well. But relationships never work out. And one wonders, but this relationship, the way it started, I was 100% sure this is the one. What happened? What went wrong? Is because once a familiar spirit is at work, nothing goes right. In the beginning, it can all start good. But in the middle, hell will break loose. Familiar spirits are so dangerous that they can help somebody say what you want to hear in order for you to love them. I don't know if you guys got that. Familiar spirits can cause somebody to say things that you are familiar with, things that will make you happy, and you will conclude, this person loves me. This person is serious about me. And only to realize that their words don't match their actions. It's a familiar spirit. It's familiar with its victim. And it will say what you are familiar with, or rather what you want to hear. I hate this spirit. I hate familiar spirits with all that is in me. I've seen destinies hijacked. I've seen people with greatness everywhere but nowhere because of familiar spirits. They don't care about your degree. They don't care about your educational background. They know this is how far you are going to go, and they will make sure you don't go as far. Some of you are dealing with poverty that never started with you. Some of you are dealing with sicknesses that never started with you. Some are dealing with trauma, family traumas that did not start with you. Inherited giants. But I want to assure you that there is a way that one can be delivered. One can come out of all this. One can be rescued from all this. One can be separated. One can be taken out, brought out from all this. I'm talking about familiar spirits. And the number one way, or the number one solution that one can use, so to say, to come out completely is what we call prayer and fasting. That is because there has never been an issue or a problem that prayer and fasting failed to solve. If you want to be as spiritual as one can ever think, be in fasting. Enter into a fasting. Enter into a fasting. And once you are in a fasting, guess what then happens? Your spirit, man, because you are a spirit possessing a soul living in a body. You are not a body possessing a soul living in the spirit. So every time you fast, your spirit man gains power. Your spirit man is in charge. And if you pray from that now, I'm talking about fasting, when your spirit man is in control, guess what then happens? Every spirit that is either monitoring or a familiar spirit, it doesn't matter what type of spirit that is afflicting you, will live your life. That's why Jesus said, this kind of spirits, this kind does not go out. That young man had a familiar spirit that knew him, that caused him to go into fire, caused him to go into water. He didn't want to do that, but he ended up in there, not because he was controlling himself, not because he was in charge of his senses, because he had a spirit that knew him and caused him to do certain things. But Jesus came and rebuked it. And the disciples asked, how come we failed? And Jesus gave them the solution. And he said, this kind. So even the kind of familiar spirits can only go out by prayer and fasting. And that is number one. Number two, the spirit that we are dealing with right now uses people who you yourself have a weak spot for, yet they have a wicked spot for you. Any relationship, whether it's a love relationship, whether friendship, hear me, any relationship, come here. Any relationship that is not a blessing but a burden, you need to let go of that relationship. Any relationship that is making you bitter, not better, you need to let go of that relationship. Any relationship that is pulling you away from the presence of God, it is not from God. It is not a blessing. That thing is a distraction. And you need to let go. Because that's what they use. That's what the Bible then says. Do not be equally yoked. And then it goes further and it says, what relationship does light have with darkness? And a lot of people tend to downplay that and think, you know what I want. Or later on, it will be better. The funny thing about familiar spirits, time has no power over familiar spirit. Let me say that again. One thing about these things, familiar spirits, is that time has no power over them. So it doesn't get better with time. Just in case you think time will solve this. No, time can't. Time does not have power over spiritual things.